Today we're going to be building a beautiful navigation pane in Power BI. We're going to jump right into the tutorial because we have a lot to cover, but if you like what you see, please consider following me on LinkedIn, which is linked down below in the video description, or giving me a subscribe. All right, let's start building. So here's the navigation pane that we're going to be building. In this video, I'm going to use a lot of techniques that others have talked about quite a bit, but I'm going to use one new technique that I haven't seen anywhere else, and I'll tell you what that technique is at the end of the video. See if you can guess it, and let me know down in the comments if you watched the video all the way through and you got it right. All right, first things first, I'm going to open up Power BI and I'm going to create a new blank report. In this blank report, I'm then going to go ahead and I'm going to first hit File, then Save, and I'm going to save it as YouTube video demo. Then I'm going to take my first step in making the dashboard look pretty, and that's setting a canvas background. You can get to the canvas background by expanding the formatting pane, then going down into canvas background, then clicking browse, and then selecting the image. And I'll have this gradient in the GitHub that I link down below in the video description with all the other resources. One quick thing is you often want to check that transparency is set to 0% because by default it's typically set to 100. Next, we're going to add some shapes. So I'm going to go over here to Insert, then I'm going to go to Shape, and I'm going to insert two rounded rectangles. One will be for our navigation pane, and one will be for the body, where we have all of our visuals. So I'll expand this over here. And I'll make this one a little bit more narrow and this one a little bit wider. With a skip back over to the formatting pane, we can format those shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search for color. Within color, you can then get in and you can set the fill to white, the border to white on both of these shapes, fill to white, color to border to white. And then you can also set the pixels by searching round. And if we go on down in the shape style, you can make it so they're a little less round and a little more rectangle. So let's leave each of these at 6%. And then let's put this one at a little bit less with 3. All right. Then let's go ahead and align these so there's a nice visual border around them. Now, I know I could have just switched off the border for these shapes, but I typically don't, and old habits die hard. So do as I say and just switch off the border instead of changing the color, not as I did just there. Now, let's add in a company logo. Even though this is just a dashboard for a YouTube video demo, it's always good to put in a company logo. In this case, my company is going to be Company ABC, and their logo is going to be a rounded rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and insert in a text box and shape right now. I'm going to go over to the Insert tab right here and click Text Box, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert in a tiny rounded rectangle, and oops, this one should be a text box. There we go. In the text box, I'm going to type in Company ABC, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this font a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go in with a 16, and I'm going to go bold, and I'm going to go this to Segio bold. All right, there is my company name right there. Now we may have noticed that I found my second shape, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete one of them, and oh, there's my other text box, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that. So I now just have one shape, which I'm going to hold the Shift key to keep a square, and I'm going to make it much smaller, and I'm going to put it right up here, and I'll move my text box right up here as well. Now you may notice that this isn't going to fit, so I'm going to make it 2 lines. Can make this a little bit bigger and collapse this down. And then, oops, I'm going to align this right here. Then with that shape still selected, I'm going to skip back over here and I'm going to go back over to my fill, and I'm going to set my fill to a nice bright red color. So in this case, perhaps that pink. And in this case, I'm going to turn off my border right there. Okay, there is my company logo. I'm then going to go ahead and I'm going to add one more text box. So insert text box right here, and I'm going to type in navigation. I'm going to go Control A, make this italics, go right here and go right here, and maybe go with like a slightly lighter gray down here below. And I'll shrink that and move that right here. All right, well, with these formatting tasks out of the way, it's now time to insert in a page navigator. So to do that, I'm going to go back over to this insert. I'm going to go to Buttons, Navigator, Page Navigator. And just like that, we have a page navigator. Now, page navigators are really cool. They automatically pick up on the name of your pages. So I'm going to move this down here just so we can see it. And I'm going to name this page Home. And you can see the page navigator changed. I'm then going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to duplicate right here, another value right here, and I'll call this KPIs, just so you can see. And as you can see, the page navigator automatically picked up on it. Then we're going to engage in some formatting that you might have seen in other videos. So let's go over into the formatting tab. What we're going to do is we are going to change it to a layout. So we're going to change our layout orientation from horizontal to vertical. All right, so I'm going to now bring this over here next to the formatting pane so we can format it together. If you notice, there's a lot of formatting here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expand this style section. We're going to start with default. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to a far left formatting. And then I'm going to turn off fill, turn off border. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set the text color to black. But as you can notice right here, we can't see it. And that's because we need to edit these other settings. So I'm going to make sure that fill and border are turned off here on hover. On press, I'm going to make sure that they're turned off. And then on selected, if you notice the font color is different, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that to black. And now here you can see we have two very different buttons. Now, one last thing I'm going to do that I forgot to do is I'm going to go back to default. I'm going to set this to bold, and I'm going to go to selected, and I'm also going to leave it at bold. Now, this is a technique that you've probably seen from a lot of other people, because now that these are transparent, you can put icons behind them, which is a good solution, but we're going to do something a little different. You see, when you put icons behind these, you're constantly having to worry about alignment. So what we're instead going to do is we're going to insert in a new visual. And that new visual is going to be a slicer visual. In particular, the new button slicer video. But before we can do that, we need to get some data into this file. And that data is the image data. So if you haven't seen this video, I released it's a video on some icon packs that I put together that were from both Microsoft's Fluent Icon Pack and then Google's Material UI. And I've got a really simple dashboard that you can go and you can click and you can search through all these visuals and you can type in and they pop open. And then you can go into the table and I have all of the SVG data. So for this, I've chosen the three visuals. I have chosen a home visual, a KPI visual, and then a help visual. If we go back into the version of this that I've already built, what you'll see is that I have two different versions of each and every single one of these icons. One with white and one with black. So what I've done to prepare that data is if we go over here into the data section, is I have inserted in some data. So the first thing I've inserted in is my SVG icon data with the icon path in black. And the second piece is, and if we scroll a little over, the version of it in white, as well as a sort order. So if we look at this data table over here, we have icon, icon selected, the page that it corresponds to, and then the sort order. Okay, now back to my file that doesn't have any of this. Let's go ahead and let's insert it. So I'm going to go over to this home tab. I'm going to go over into enter data, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste in the data from that other file. Now, if you're interested in learning how to set up and play with these icons, go watch my other video. It's very detailed on like how to play with SVG icons. I don't want to get into it for this tutorial just for the sake of time. So let me paste in this data. Okay, I now am pasting in the data. So right here, we now have our pages, which is going to be the text behind the pages, the icon selected, and then the sort order. And I'm going to name this icons for navigator right there. And this data is then going to go ahead and it's going to load into my data model. There's now a few other things I need to do. So I'm going to go over here into this table view. Then in my column, I'm going to tell it to sort by sort order. So I'm going to go to page and I'm going to go sort by sort order, icon, sort by sort order. And then I'll scroll all the way over and I'll go right here, sort by sort order. Then I'm going to tell it that this data category is an image URL, so it knows it can run. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to set this one to an image URL, so it knows to display it as an image as well. And just like that, we're ready to build our visual. Into here, and I'm going to click New Visual. Then my new visual is going to be, my new visual is going to be the new slicer icon. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to add in my page as the field. And then I'm going to have to set some image settings. So let's make this a little easier for you guys to see. I'm going to collapse the filters pane and I'm going to bring this over here right next to the formatting section. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the number of columns. So I'm going to search for columns and I'm going to drop this down to 1. All right, there we go. Then I'm going to search for image right here. And I'm going to drag in my icon as image. Then I'm going to turn on set as background. And I'm going to change it from fill to normal. And just like that, we have our image icons popping up. Then the same way we had a default and a hover, we're going to need to go ahead and do some settings here. So we don't want to do anything in hover. We don't want to do anything in press. Selected, we're going to want to have it be our icon selected. And then mixed, we are just going to want it to be our regular icon. Okay, now, so when we roll over these and select one, if you notice it now turns white where it was black. So far, this is looking pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead and let's turn off our values. So I'm going to go into my callout values and I'm going to turn them off. Okay, and I'm also going to go ahead and make sure that that's off for all of these other settings. And right now it is. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search for shape. I'm going to change these from a rectangle to a rounded rectangle. And I'm going to decrease the pixels. Then I can go ahead and I can shape these. And as you might be noticing, we're now starting to get our icons. But there's still some interaction here when we hover over. And there's maybe not as much spacing between these icons as we might like. So let's power run through a few more settings. First, I'm going to switch off the title so we get rid of that page. Then I'm going to search for header icons and I'm going to turn them off. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into slicer settings. I'm going to have single select on, force selection. So that way we now have 1, 2, and 3. Then I'm going to collapse this and I'm going to go into our button section. As you notice, we have both border and fill turned on. I'm going to turn off fill for right now. See, it's on default, but when we have this selected, I'm going to go into selected and I'm going to have fill be the light pink. Now, you might have noticed when I turned off fill, it turns it off for all of the modes here. So like if I turn it off on default, when I now go back over here to selected, it's still off. So this is one of the things where you have to have it fully on. So I'm going to have this home be the light pink, and then I'm going to go into these others. The default is going to be white. Okay, next I'm going to adjust my border settings. I am definitely going to leave the border on here, and that's because it can help create some spacing between these icons, see? And like control size a little bit more. So I'm going to go right up here and I'm going to go into my select and I'm going to set it also to that same pink color. So now when I play with these, as you notice, right, these are now icons that are now perfectly laid out here, which is pretty cool, and I keep on losing them, so I'm going to select this out, right? These are now icons that are now perfectly laid out. Oh, and it looks like I might have forgotten us a hover setting, so I'm going to go back over here, and we're just going to go through hover, and we're going to make sure that that fill is also set to white. We'll go to press, make sure that press is also set to white, and then selected is good. And then because we turned on single select, we won't have mixed, but we'll make this go white as well. So there we go. Now when we click onto these, they're nicely formatted. Okay, one last thing, the rounding looks a little bit off, so I'm going to go into rounding or into shape here. And I'm going to set my rounded rectangles all the way down. And there we go. Look, we have some nice icons. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this over here. And you might notice, well, this is looking absolutely massive compared to where these are. So I'm going to go and I'm going to expand these out right here. And I'm going to go back over and I'm going to adjust my border just a little bit in my button section. So I think I had my border set to 6 pixels. I'm going to go down to 3, which will make the icons a lot bigger. And I'm going to set this to narrow padding. And I'm going to do that on my selected. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to select this to narrow. And then I'll go into my press. 1, 2, 3. Narrow. And I'll do the same in my hover. And there we go. Nice. These are looking pretty good. Okay, so when we now move these all over, you can now see we now have these great like little icons. Isn't that great? And I keep on accidentally clicking over these. But we now have this. And if you notice, the spacing here doesn't quite add up. So how are we going to fix this, right? Because ideally we want all these icons to lay out perfectly with these other icons that I might have. Well, first things first, I'm going to move both of these over here so you can see the formatting pane. So I'm going to go and I'm going to bring both these over here. Okay, so here we have our home and we have our KPIs. And if we select over this one of the things we need to do is we need to increase the padding on this one side. So I'm going to set this to 50 pixels right here. And if you notice, it just moved all the way over. So now we have space for our icons on that same button, right? So like there's now, this is still the button right here all the way, but there's now space for the icons to go. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to go into layout. And in this layout setting, we have this space between buttons, right? And we can increase this, right, until we have icons that we're happy with, right? So here we are right there. And if we now bring this over, right, we now have these laid out pretty much exactly where we're icon. And look, they're staying in like this nice grid pattern here. And so all we really need to do is we just need to add one more single page. So our next page is going to be our help, right? And then if we go back over here, our KPIs now recognize it. So we can then expand this right here. And just like that, if we select this over, right, here we are. Look at how pretty that is. And I keep on moving these, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group these two. So we've got our page and our page navigator. So I'm going to bring our page navigator up above in the selection pane, and I'm going to group these right. And just like that, we have a beautiful navigation pane. So we got to do a little bit of cleanup here, right? Because right now we're actually on the KPIs page and it says help. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. So I'm going to rename this page to help, right? Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete this one. Then I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to rename this one KPIs. And I'm going to bring this over here. I'll leave that one as, and I think, there we go. Home, KPI, and I got to name this KPIs. Okay, one final thing, we then have to go onto each page and make sure the box is selected. So I go KPIs, expand my group, select page, right here, right? I now select KPIs. Then finally on home, and we need to delete this out. And we need to also make a home. So I'll go duplicate. I'll go right here. And I'll title this one home. And then on our home page, we'll do one final thing. So we'll go into page and we will control click page. All right, so now when we navigate through these, what you can see is you can see each and every single one of these is really pretty. So you ready to see it in action? First, let's put a text box onto every single page just so we know that they're all different pages. So here's our help page, right? Then we'll copy this and we'll put it right here and we'll go KPIs. And then we'll copy this and we'll go home. Okay. Then since we're in Power BI desktop and this hasn't been published up to the service, we'll have to hold the control key and look at that. Our buttons are working exactly as we want them to. Well, if you made it to this point in the video, did you guess what I did differently? The answer is I used the new slicer visual. With stuff like this where it's really cool visually and it can be difficult to maintain, every single little advantage that you can get in terms of ease of use really pays off. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I don't just make videos on Power BI. I also make videos on Microsoft Fabric and Python and all kinds of other cool business intelligence stuff. But I appreciated having you here, and I hope you enjoyed the video.